There is something really special and delicious about a good warm bowl of homemade soup that is full with goodness. So these are the ingredients that we're going to start off with. I have one onion here that is chopped up, roughly about one small onion or about half of a larger onion. I've also got some carrots. I've got a handful of culantro leaves here. We also have some thyme. I am using a good amount of thyme because it really adds really great flavor to the broth of the soup. This is about maybe even 5 sprigs of thyme, fresh thyme. Again, my culantro leaves, a nice handful, bunch of. I have a couple of celery sticks and one really large green onion, as well as several cloves of garlic. Now these are smaller cloves of garlic, that's why I'm using a good amount of it, but remember, this is soup, this is a lot of broth, and we want a lot of flavor in it. I really don't like a bland soup. The first thing we're going to do is start prepping these. We're also going to need other ingredients later on, like potatoes and sweet potatoes. And one thing about my soup that I like is I like to put a lot of things in it because it's not really an appetizer, it's more of a meal. So I'm going to really finely mince my culantro leaves. Like I said, you can also use cilantro for this. So I'm just going to go ahead and really finely mince up my culantro leaves. And again, all the amounts that I used will be listed below in the description box for you guys. Finally, give that a nice mince, and the thyme that I'm using, I'm leaving those whole. You can remove the leaves off of the thyme and just use that, but I'm just going to toss that in whole. After I finally minced up that delicious culantro, which is probably my favorite herb of them all, I'm going to go ahead and place them on my plate here. And all we're going to do is pretty much just cut up mostly all of the other things. I'm just leaving the thyme whole, like I said, but the green onions I'm going to finely mince as well. Finally just chop that up, as well as my celery. Maybe about 1/4 inch pieces of the celery, and I'm also going to mince my garlic. You can also grate your garlic if you want. I like mincing it because I just feel like it works better in my soup. I'm also going to just cut my carrots up. I'm going into about an inch pieces of my carrots. I like to have the bigger chunks of carrots in it, so that way they don't break up and become mush in the soup. And as well as I have one really large russet potato here, and as well as a sweet potato. I'm going to go ahead and wash and peel and clean my potatoes and cut them up into pieces, maybe about 2 inches, because I want big chunks in there. This is going to be boiling away. I have some smaller pieces, some larger pieces, but I want them to be a decent size so they don't break up too much in the soup. And the sweet potato, I'm going to go a little bit smaller than the potato because it does take a little bit longer to cook and become tender. And then we're just going to go ahead and put this together. I will be needing a couple more ingredients later on for our dumplings, which my soup cannot be complete without dumplings. So into my really large pot here, you can use whatever pot that you have on hand, but you want it to be kind of large at least. I have some chicken pieces here that I have cleaned off the skin, cut them up into small pieces, about 2 inches pieces or so. They've been washed and cleaned, and I'm going to go ahead and add them into my pot. Now my pot has about a tablespoon of vegetable at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and add in my chicken, and my heat is on about medium heat or so. What I'm looking for is just to develop some color on my chicken. So I'm just going to give this a little toss around just to make sure that it's sitting evenly in the oil, and then we're going to generously season this with salt and pepper. I'm using a good amount of salt, maybe about a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of salt, because this is seasoning not only the chicken at this point, but also the veggies that we're going to be adding in, and etc. So, and lots of black pepper. Black pepper has such great flavor, about a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Give that a mix, and now we're just going to let this cook away on medium heat and develop some lovely color for about 5 to 10 minutes or so. As you can start seeing there, about 5 minutes later, the juices are starting to be released from the chicken. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in my culantro, my garlic, my onion, my green onion, as well as my celery, and my thyme as well. all of the seasonings for the chicken, I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Now, I don't normally season my chicken with celery, but in the soup, I like to add celery to this. I'm going to add that all in and give this a nice toss around. We're just going to kind of let the veggies and everything sweat down and let the chicken release a little bit more of its flavor and all. So give that a really nice toss around. Cover this up because we don't want to lose any of that flavor and that liquid. So we're going to go ahead and cover this up and let this go for about 5 minutes or so. So after about 5 minutes, we're just going to go ahead and remove the lid. And once that chicken starts releasing all its delicious juices, we're going to give this a toss and we're going to go ahead and start adding in our liquid. Now, all the amounts that I use will be in the description box for you guys for how much liquid I use, but you definitely, this is a really large pot for me, so the amount of liquid that I'll be using, I'm definitely leaving some room, at least like 3 inches or so, because as we add in our carrots and our potatoes, we don't want anything spilling over. So I'm going to leave everything that I use below, but whatever pot you're using, make sure and add enough that, you know, it doesn't spill later on. After I've added in my liquid, I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 chicken bouillon cubes. You can also use the Maggie pack soups, which a lot of people do. I can't really seem to find those where I am, so I always use these chicken bouillon cubes, and they work fantastic. So you can use one of those Maggie packs that you have, but I have these Maggie cubes, chicken bouillon cubes, which is what I'll be using, and I'll be using 2 of those because this is a lot of water, this is a lot of soup. I want to make sure, like I said, everything is really well flavored and seasoned and has beautiful flavor in every sip of broth. It is that important to have flavorful soup. So here I'm adding a little bit more black pepper because it's a lot of liquid, I want a lot of flavor. Now there are many times that I'll add either lentils to my soup or yellow split peas, green split peas. You can definitely add it at this point, maybe about a half a cup or so if you want to. I'm not adding any of this in this recipe, but you can definitely add either some lentils or some yellow or green split peas. I'm going to cover this up, let this come up to a boil, and let all of those ingredients kind of just melt away into the broth. And let's go ahead and start making our dumplings. Now in my bowl here, I've got some all-purpose flour, I've got some granulated sugar, and some salt. Now I love to use granulated sugar or sugar in my dumplings because it just adds a little bit of sweetness to it, so it's so good. I'm going to go ahead and add in some nice warm water and just mix it all together. Again, all the amounts that I used are in the description box below. Mix that together, and we're just going to use our hands. I'm just starting off with a spoon here, and we're going to switch over to our hands just to bring in the dough together. Not going to really knead this or anything, but we just want to make sure and bring it in together and work in the flour and the water together, so it kind of becomes a nice little dough ball. I'm just going to, I'm not really kneading this, but I'm just pressing the dough into itself here. I'm going to do that for about a minute, and then we're just going to let our dough sit for about 10 minutes or so before we make our dumplings. So my soup here has come up to a nice rolling boil. I'm just going to give it a little stir around. And it's been going for about 10 minutes or so, and you can see the lovely color in this. And we haven't used any packed soup or anything, so this color is just coming from the flavor and from the herbs and everything that we've already used. We are going to go ahead and add in our carrots and our potatoes at this point. Our sweet potatoes, our carrots and potatoes, and be careful when you add them in. I'm adding them one by one. You don't want any that hot liquid splashing back on you. And I'm going to give it a gentle stir. Now, I like to add some pasta into my soup. It just adds more body and adds more, you know, things in there, so it's a little bit more filling. Again, our soup is not an appetizer or starter meal. It is a meal on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my noodles. Now, I'm using rotini noodles here, pasta. You can use whatever you got on hand. And let this boil away. And then we're going to go ahead and start making our dumplings. Cover that up and let that go away, and let's start making our dumplings. Now on the same cutting board, guys, I use the same cutting board throughout this entire soup. Okay, I just gave it a quick wipe down, and I'm gonna go ahead and just add a little dusting of flour. Really don't need too much. And what normally people like to do is they like to squeeze off portions of their dough, about a tablespoon portion, and then start to roll it in their hands to make a dumpling. You can definitely do that if you want. It kind of gets my hand a little bit tired, so what I like to do is take my whole piece of dough, roll it into a log, roll it into a nice little log like that, and I'm just going to take my knife, same knife that I used. No need to get a clean one. They're all going in the same place. And I'm just going to cut little pieces about maybe 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 of an inch thick. As you can see, they're already in the length and the shape of a dumpling. So it takes less rolling in my hands pretty much. So it makes it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting those up. Again, you can pinch them out and roll them if you want. I find this to be so much easier. I will still be rolling them, but this just makes it easier. So I'm going to take one of my pieces of my little dough here, and then I'm going to just roll it in my hands for a couple seconds or so. I like to make some of my dumplings thicker and some of my dumplings thinner. And if they're really long, you can just go ahead and cut them in half. So you got 2 dumplings. I love to have dumplings in my soup. They're one of my favorite parts. And they are finished here. We're just going to go ahead and add them to our soup, which has been boiling away lovely. I'm going to add them in one at a time, and I like to add them in different parts of the pot, so they're all not just sitting in one area. They kind of just, you know, are throughout the entire thing. I'm going to give this a stir. Now, since I've had all these potatoes and everything in there, what I like to do is take my spoon and go to the bottom of the pot and give it a gentle stir. Because if I was to stir in the center of the pot, I just feel like it can break up potatoes and everything like that. And I want to keep everything in a nice shape. So I'm going to just give it a stir. And what I like to do at this point is kind of like remove the lid a little bit off of the pot and let it boil away for another 15 minutes or so. Kind of cook those dumplings up. Now I have some frozen corn here, and I love corn in my soup, and I always have these little frozen cobs of corn. I'm just going to go ahead and add in some of that to my soup. After mixing everything in, what I love to add to my soup is some broccoli. Now I have some broccoli here that I've just cut off the florets. They've washed and cleaned and really nice and cut up into small pieces, some smaller than others and some bigger. And I love to add broccoli to my soup. The last 15 minutes or so, it kind of breaks up throughout the soup. It's extra goodness, extra nutrition and everything. And my little one actually loves broccoli in her soup. So I love to add it in, and it's always, you know, great nutrition. Why not? Add it in about the last 15 minutes or so and let it boil away and let everything just come together. This is, you know, pretty much done here. We're just going to let it boil away a little bit more. Now, even though we've added a lot of salt and pepper and chicken bouillon cubes, which has a lot of sodium in it, do taste towards the end here. Take a little spoonful and make sure it's kind of cool before you taste it, obviously. And taste whether you need to add more salt. I do, and I like mine a little bit on the saltier side, so I like to add some seasoned salt because it has a lot of flavor and it has a lot of different things other than just plain salt, and it adds really great. A little bit of extra color to the soup and also a little extra flavor. So I just added that in and tasted, and it was perfect, and that's it. I'm just going to remove this from the heat, let it cool a little before serving, and you got yourself a homemade bowl of soup. Chicken, vegetables, corn, pasta, dumplings. I mean, everything is just so good. Perfectly flavored and seasoned and delicious. And healthy, too. Don't forget that. I hope that you guys enjoyed this recipe. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.